How about now? Sonic asked, with his hands covering his eyes. Not yet. Be patient. Zelda, I'm the wrong person to be saying that line to, he quipped. Okay, fine. Turn around. The hedgehog uncovered his eyes as he turned to them to see a most welcome sight. Zelda, in an attractive one-piece swimsuit, colored a deep regal blue with the crest of the royal house of Hyrule emblazoned on the stomach. Sonic's green eyes were full of awe before her form. Shyness was evident on her face, a deep blush across her cheeks. Anyone who was friends with her knew that Zelda wasn't a vain woman who used her looks to her advantage. In fact, she was very humble about her overall appearance. She was well aware that many of the males in the mansion considered her beautiful, but she didn't really pay it too much mind. Most of the time, she went out of her way to downplay her looks, rarely straying from her normal royal dress. This was probably the first time she'd ever worn a swimsuit in front of a guy outside of Link and Snake, and judging by the looks on his face, it was getting the reaction she wanted. So, she asked, her hands behind her back. You look like a goddess, Sonic uttered. She giggled at the look on his face. She honestly didn't know if she wanted to be considered attractive to a talking hedgehog. You're too kind. It took me a while to pick out a good one. She gave a quick twirl, showing off her nice figure to her friend. Sonic looked as if he had seen a plate full of chili dogs, what with the drool forming from his gaping mouth. She walked over and playfully closed it with her hand. I take it you approve? Regaining his senses, he gave her a quick thumbs up. That outfit gets the official Sonic seal of approval. Thanks, Sonic. Zelda quickly walked over to the edge of the lake, sticking her slender feet into the water. The coolness caused her to retract her limbs suddenly, but soon got used to the temperature as she strolled into the water. Ah, she uttered. Now this is wonderful. The princess ducked her head under the surface, moistening her entire body from head to toe. She splashed around a bit before looking back at her companion. Come on in, Sonic. Water's fine. Despite the eager and enticing invite of the woman, Sonic stuck to his same spot some ways away from the water's edge. I'm okay, Zelda. I'll just watch you, he answered nervously. She saw the apprehension in his face. Sonic couldn't swim. She knew it. Link knew it. Snake knew it. Everyone knew it. The speedy hedgehog couldn't swim a lick, and made it a habit of staying far away from large bodies of water. He didn't want to take the risk of falling in and drowning. Her heart went out to him, but still, she wanted to enjoy the time with him. That's no fun. Come on, I won't let you drown. It's okay, Zelda. You don't have to worry about me that much. Please? Zelda, the only way for that to work is for you to hold on to me or something. The aristocrat extended her arms out towards him. That's the idea. At this point, and even with the water, there was no way on earth Sonic was going to turn down such an offer. Taking a deep breath, he carefully waded into the lake and into the arms of the beauteous gentlewoman. She snapped her arms around him, feeling his bantam body freeze up. There now. I've got you, she whispered into his ear. Yeah, I'm fine. You're fine. Everything's fine. Oh God, are we sinking? We're sinking. We're gonna drown. Zelda tried to quiet the fit of giggles trying to escape her mouth as he panicked in her arms. The fact that he was even in the water was something she never thought she would get him to do. Maybe she looked better than she thought. So what do we do now? Just relax. With one arm around his body, she pushed off and began to swim with him, surprising Sonic. What he didn't know was that before this moment was that Princess Zelda was a very strong swimmer, probably the strongest in the entire kingdom. It was thanks to years upon years of her sneaking out of the castle and taking private swims in Lake Hylia. It also didn't hurt that she got tips from a few Zoras here and there, but nevertheless, she was certainly strong enough to swim with Sonic under her arm. Like Zelda beforehand, Sonic was filled with a sense of joy and wonder as he felt the water rush past his form. For the first time, he knew what the sensation of moving through the water without flailing like a madman when he found himself in the body of water without his consent. He looked up at Zelda, seemingly very at home in this environment, and yet found another reason for his unconditional adoration of her. Once they reached the center, she turned on her back with the hedgehog in front of her, their faces facing the wide blue sky. For Sonic, this is what heaven must feel like. Relaxed? Very. And he blew up half the moon. The moon? Really? Oh yeah. Say what you want about Eggman, the guy does nothing halfway, Sonic said before finishing off the last bite of the last chili dog that the kind princess had made for him. Lunch was a simple affair, with Zelda insisting on doing all the cooking, and stunningly, she made the best chili dogs he had ever eaten. In turn, he brought along dessert, several slices of Princess Peach's award-winning cake. It took months of bribing and begging from Sonic to get her to not only make it, but keep it a secret from everyone. Most of all, Zelda, not an easy task given how absent-minded the Mushroom Kingdom's monarch could be, but the job was completed with very much secrecy. Zelda was ecstatic and enjoyed the cake, saving half of it for later. Now the duo were enjoying the afternoon sun beneath the sole tree of the area. Sonic was relishing the feeling of the best pillow money can buy, Zelda's lap. The princess was being regaled with the tales of Sonic's adventures and battles with the nefarious scientist Dr. Eggman, her palm tenderly stroking his azure quills. You've had some pretty impressive adventures for a hedgehog. Nothing much. Just another day in the life, princess. You make it sound so average. It was true for Sonic. He wasn't the type to brag on himself for the things he had done. For someone so fast, he was surprisingly humble and grounded, something she enjoyed over Marth telling her about the gallant adventures that he had had. Not to say he was lying, it's just the presentation that turned her off from the prince. You've been to space, fought ancient gods, and even met your younger self. It's nothing much, really. It's just things that happen in my life, he said. Plus, I'm lucky to have the friends I have to share with it. Oh, you mean Miles? Sonic laughed. Zelda was probably the only person who couldn't help calling Tails by his real name. His best friend would very much like this woman. Yep, Tails is an amazing pilot, an awesome engineer, and a great friend. You seem to make a lot of friends easily. What about your other friends? Well, he paused for a bit, trying to find a good way to describe his allies. Knuckles is kind of a stick in the mud, but I trust him to watch my back in a fight. Shadow is complicated. Hard to tell what that guy is really thinking. Very distant kind of guy. Almost like Snake in a way. Rouge is very forward, knows what she wants and how to get it. And then there's Amy. Ah, the fan. That's a good way to put it. She's a nice enough girl, but she just doesn't get that I don't like her that way. I'm not the type to settle down or anything, for that matter. Is she cute? Cute enough. It's her personality that turns me off. Too clingy and possessive. It's not my style. There was a small pause before Zelda spoke again. Sonic, can I ask you a question? If you don't want to answer it, I can understand. Sure, go ahead. Are you a virgin? It caught him off guard. He didn't really expect her to ask him such a question. It took him a while to collect himself before answering. Nope, not a virgin. Lost that a while ago. Really? Asked an interested Zelda. Was it to Amy? Oh, God, no, he answered quickly. If that happened, she'd never leave me alone for a second. No, I've only had sex twice in my life. Only twice? Yep. Surprised? Only a little bit. So, who were they? The blue blur took a deep breath before he started. Her name is Blaze the Cat. She was a princess like you, very regal and royal, but with a common touch. You two are a lot alike, really. Strong and powerful, but heavy with burden. We worked together a few times since she was only from another dimension. She had problems trusting others since she always had to do things herself without anybody else to help her. It took her a while to get her up to open up to me, but we became friends. It was at my birthday party. She took me aside and said she'd been racking her brain trying to figure out what to get me. When I finally asked her what she got me, she just kissed me. Then we went to a private spot and, well, you know. Afterwards, we just went back to the party and no one was the wiser. That was a great present. Tell me about it. The second time was with Rouge. We kind of ran into each other one day. We got to talking, and then she just asked point blank if I wanted to have sex with her. Seriously? She asked incredulously. Just like that. Told you that Rouge is just blunt. She didn't like to mince words. Well, I was bored, and she looked pretty good, so I figured, what the hell, and went at it. It was just a passion thing, one time. You don't hear me judging. So what about you? Are you still a virginal princess? He asked jokingly. The princess turned her head to the side, her face awash in crimson. No, but you better not tell any others that I said that. I will tell everyone your real name. That warning was enough to ensure his silence. Very few people knew Sonic's real name, and he kept it that way. How ZELDA got it out of him was a mystery best left for another day. Okay, I promise, he said in a panic. That was enough. Sometimes ZELDA can be scary when she needs to be. So, I'm guessing it was Link? She nodded at his inquiry. It was just a one-time thing, nothing serious. We both agreed not to tell anyone. Plus, I'd rather Samus not know about this. Say no more. She smiled at his reassurance. He casually closed his eyes, taking in the harmony of the scene around him. He turned his head into her lap, breathing in her gentle scent. You smell good, he murmured. I took a long shower, she joked, running her free hand across his midsection. She enjoyed petting him this way, almost like a cat, but far more adorable. She started to hum to herself, an old tune her mother used to sing when she was a child. It seemed to have an effect on her companion as he began to nod off into a small nap. Now, she wasn't sure when or how it happened. Looking back at it, a part of her must have wanted to do it since it occurred under her watch and Sonic was drifting off to sleep, so he can't be blamed. Nevertheless, somehow, someway, she found her hand gliding along his arms, his stomach, and finally to what she could probably call his crotch. It was very soft down there, softer than most of him, really. The softness intrigued her on an almost subconscious level, causing her palm to caress the area more than she really should have. It was a few minutes after that she started to notice it, a slight but growing hardness. She really didn't notice at first, her mind adrift in thoughts, but it was when ZELDA cast a lazy eye to the area that she saw it. Her hand was on top of Sonic's hard penis. It took all of her willpower just to keep from screaming out in shock. Her modesty yelled at her to take her hand away, but she was instantly silenced by her immense curiosity. Part of her always wondered what it looked like. The sexual organ of a talking anthropomorphic hedgehog. Now she had her answer. It was decent sized, a pale pink color and somewhat thick. It wasn't bigger than Link's, but it was just different. She was fascinated, and a tad bit turned on. Before she even realized it, her hand was fondling the member like a child playing with clay. She felt the texture, the girth, the weight, the heat of it. The princess noted every curve and bump of it, pushing her curiosity to a new level. Sonic began to stir in his sleep, a slight grin on his face. This spurred her on. Throwing all caution and sense to the wind, she wrapped her fingers around his shaft and began to move up and down the dimensions of it. He sucked in some air at the pleasurable feeling she was inflicting upon him. Sonic began to get more restless the longer she played with him. She placed her hand on his head, trying to keep him still. Shh. She placed a small kiss on his forehead as her hand sped up. The amount of power she felt at this moment rivaled any magic she could cast. She whispered sweet, unintelligible nothings into his ear as he unconsciously buried his face into her lap, inhaling her delightful scent. His dick started to jerk. He was getting close. There was nothing to stop him or her. It was all right with her. Holy shit! Sonic awoke just as he climaxed into Zelda's soft hand. Between the disorientations of waking up suddenly and the rush of positive stimulus, it took him a few seconds to find his bearings and clear his thoughts. Breathing heavily, he looked at Zelda, then to his crotch. He saw his cock. He saw her hand. He saw his semen on her hand. He looked back at her. All Zelda did was give him an eager grin. Wow, he finally spoke. That's one way to wake up. The first few stars awoke in the night sky as Sonic sped back to the Smash Mansion with Zelda in her arms. They couldn't have been back much sooner, but they decided to take the long way back, which was for Sonic just walking back at a normal pace. They spent the time chatting about various things. Among them was the princess giving the hedgehog a not-so-rude awakening. Once the sun had sunk beneath the horizon and the moon had shown its lunar face, the pair figured it was time to head back. Sonic zipped into the courtyard where Snake and Link had their morning spar before they left. Using his incredible reflexes, he bounded up a tree and along the roof of the vast building to reach the slightly open window to the room that belonged to Zelda. Last stop, beautiful princess's rooms. Everyone off the bus, he quietly joked as he landed inside of her room. She tittered a bit at his little joke, but as she reluctantly climbed out of his arms. And I was just enjoying the ride. Didn't hurt that the driver was so adorable. The blue blur scratched his head at her compliment. You didn't have to drop me off at my room, Sonic. What kind of gentleman would I be if I didn't escort you home? Thank you. Don't mention it. I really had a good time today, Sonic. I can't thank you enough. It was nothing, Zelda. You deserved it. We should do it again sometimes. Oh, I agree, she said before heading to her closet. Well, I better let you go so you can get some rest. Oh, wait, she said, stopping him in his tracks. Stay for a minute. I'm going to ask you a favor. Really? A favor? Yeah, is that okay? For you, Zelda, I don't mind. The royal grinned as she retreated into her closet, presumably to change clothes. Sonic was left alone, staring at the various decorations and ornaments that adorned the area. Next to her bed was the flowers he had left her early in the morning, as well as a photo of himself and Link in what he could only, if herself and Link could only assume, is Hyrule Castle. Next to that was the small bracelet that he brought her for her birthday. He remembered shopping around for it with Link and Snake for 2 days, trying to find the perfect gift for his favorite princess. Both heroes took a lot of pleasure in mocking him and hitting him with barbs and jokes at his expense, but they were still friends enough to help him find the perfect gift. She gave him a huge hug and a kiss on the cheek, much to the jealousy of Marth, who just gave her a large bouquet of roses. His attention was called over as Zelda appeared before him in her nightgown. I hope I'm not keeping you up. It's okay, Sonic, she waved off. So what's this favor you wanted to ask? Want me to get you something to eat? Wordlessly, she glided over to her bed and sat. Nothing like that. Well, what is it? Sonic, she started. Could you spend the night with me? What? He stammered. Spend the night with me. We don't have to do anything. I just want to know what it's like to sleep next to you. If it's too much, I can understand, and I'm sorry for asking. No, he spoke quickly. It's no trouble. It's just, are you sure? I'm very sure. Well, I guess I can stay if it makes you happy. It does. Then there's no trouble. Zelda could barely contain her joy as the hedgehog hopped onto the mattress and began to remove his trademark red sneakers, while she crawled under the sheets. Wow, This bed is pretty comfy, huh? Better than sleeping under a tree, I bet, she quipped. Sonic only wagged his fingers as he joined her under the sheets. Can you hit the light? Sonic looked behind him and clicked the lamp on the nightstand, submerging the room in darkness. For a long while, neither said a word, the only sounds in the room being a pair of deep, nervous breaths. This was new to the both of them, and surely they didn't know how to proceed. Good night, Zelda. Good night, Sonic. Acting on instinct, she moved closer to him and planted a small kiss on his forehead. Playing on his own instincts, he pulled her closer, wrapping his arms around her. He was about to ask if this was okay to touch her in this way, but she didn't pull away or protest. Emboldened, he pulled her as tightly as he could against him. She responded in kind by drawing him close to her body. If Marv knew about this situation, he'd probably explode into a green cloud of jealousy. Sonic grinned in the dark. He never told her or anyone this, but he was addicted to touching Zelda. It pleased him in a way that he never knew he could be pleased. She felt and smelt so good. He buried his head in her chest, trying to absorb every single scent molecule that emanated from her form. Zelda was in the same boat as him. Hugging Sonic was happiness. The feeling of his quills against her skin gave her a high no drug could match in 1,000 years or 1,000 worlds. That's why she asked him for this favor. She wanted to know if sleeping next to him would feel just as good as hugging him, and glory to the goddesses, it felt better. Sleep was the farthest thing from each of their minds. They just wanted to feel more. Zelda felt a familiar heat grow in her core the longer she held him. It started when she jerked him off this afternoon, but now it was burning hotter than before. She moaned a little, her legs starting to move on their own and tangled up into his smaller limbs. Sonic nuzzled her chest, her breasts sandwiched between either side of his head. His hands gripped her at the thin gown as if trying to grab her soul through the skin. How far was she going to let him go? Without a word, she lightly bit on his ear. It didn't hurt. In fact, it sent him over the edge of sanity. Sonic's open mouth licked and nibbled at her gown. He really should stop before it got out of hand. I mean, she only wanted to sleep in the same bed with him. That was all, right? He honestly wanted to stop, but his desire for her had destroyed any reason he had left. Like the princess that afternoon, his hand had gotten a mind of its own and just grabbed a handful of her backside. All she did was let out a throaty moan in his ear. The heat in her body was so hot she worried if the bed would ignite. She took his hand and placed it under her gown, onto her bare ass. Sonic gasped. Her ass was so hot. And she wasn't wearing any underwear. Oh God, she was horny beyond reason, and so was he. So, she had to have known that since his dick was erect and pressing against her stomach. If someone walked in the room on him, there was no stopping him. He wanted her right now. It didn't matter that she was human. He wanted her. Sonic, she whispered in a hot, urgent tone. The normally prim and proper princess arched her leg up just enough for him. Do it. He needed no invitation as he guided himself into her wet sex. The heat, wetness, and tightness of her vagina was almost too much for him to handle. She felt nothing like rouge or blaze. This is what sex with a human was like. As he drove himself deeper into her, he pulled her gown just enough to expose her perky and pointy nipples. He didn't want to wait to consume her tits in her mouth. Zelda pulled him closer, giving him more incentive to feast upon her chest. He started to grind into her opening, very heavy and astonishingly slow for someone like him. It wasn't like sex that either of them had before. It was close, intimate, personal, almost spiritual in a way. Deep down, they both knew this was always meant to happen. From the moment she saw him, she was hopelessly attracted to him and his free personality, and he couldn't help but be drawn to her regal beauty and bearing. The line of friendship had been crossed, or maybe it never existed in the first place. She knew it. He knew it. Link knew it. Snake knew it. Samus knew it. Even that stick-in-the-mud Marth knew it. They weren't just close friends, they were attracted to each other. They just needed an extra push to get to this point. It didn't take long before Sonic expelled his seed deep into her body. He never climaxed that quickly before, but then again, this was a first for both of them. They embraced so hard that they seemed to crush the life from each other as he emptied himself into her, almost like he was marking her from the inside out. He looked up at her as she looked down at him. There was no doubt, pain or doubt in their eyes, only a hunger and wanting between them. In one swift motion, he pushed her on her back and stripped off the nightgown, discarding it to the floor. They stared at each other for a minute before they crashed into each other with a kiss. Their first kiss, but not their last. "What are you doing?" Link asked. "Listening. Trying to hear what they're doing." The bounty hunter had her ear to the wall that separated her room from Zelda's. She had heard the hedgehog run into the room but didn't hear him run out, and now her curiosity had gotten the better of her. It surprised Link to see her act this way. "Thought you weren't the one for this type of stuff." "I'm not," she answered. "Just have a bet going with Snake." "Really?" he asked incredulously. "You two bet on their love life?" He suggested it. It seemed like a good idea. "It's a stupid idea, and what makes you so sure they're doing anything in there?" Didn't hear him leave. "Okay, good point," he conceded. "Still, they could be just talking, or they could be going at it like monkeys. I don't hear anything. They could be very, very quiet." Link sighed. "Whatever they're doing, it ain't any of our business, so come away from the wall. Give me a reason to." Samus looked back at the hero. A very dirty look was on her face. He knew what that look meant. He knew what she wanted. He both hated and loved that look. That look meant he was going to be very tired and sore in the morning. He resigned himself to his fate. He had to get her away from the wall to give his friend some time alone. "Fine, but you really need to stop betting on stuff like this. Deal. Now be a good boy and strip."